Hey, what's up, everybody? Stefan Georgi here, and we're going to talk about why I rarely take free equity in other people's businesses. And I think you'll find it really valuable whether you are early on in your journey or you are much more experienced. So, as we begin here, one kind of note is that an alternative title for this could have been an entirely different way to look at how you're allocating your time. And I hope that you find this to blow your mind, frankly, because I think it's actually the way I talk about this with time. I don't see a lot of other people talking about it this way, but I think it's extremely valuable and it can really shift a paradigm for you. So let me give you the quick context here, right? Because of my track record as a direct response copywriter and marketer who's really good at direct to consumer type stuff, I get offered equity in businesses pretty often, and that's without looking for these deals. And I mentioned that simply because if I was looking for them, I could probably get equity in a ton of companies. But here's why I don't. This video is about why I don't take it, right? So I'm gonna give you a couple of assumptions and we'll explain here, right? So let's assume that I'm gonna get 5% equity in a company on average. Let's assume that for each time I do, it's going to be 5 hours of my time per month per company. Let's assume these are all good opportunities to have a shot. I'll talk about that for a second. So what kind of sparked me wanting to make this video was earlier this week I was talking with somebody who has a direct-to-consumer thing for like a pharmaceutical drug. I don't want to go too deep into the details of it, but essentially, they have an opportunity to capitalize on a very popular drug right now, and wanted my help and stuff, and they're open to giving equity, things like that. There's lots of reasons that I could convince myself that this is like a home run type of thing, and so frankly I'm still thinking about it a little bit, but I kind of thought about why I'm always so resistant to these deals. I've been offered this tons of times, right? So, but the point is, it's a good opportunity that has a shot. It's not like something where it's like a random crap project. Assume good operators, things of that nature. Let's also assume, though, 3 to 5 years until a liquidity event, meaning until the business might be sold to a buyer. And then let's say that 1 out of 10 companies I'm being offered equity in will actually sell, will actually have one of those liquidity events, which is frankly being super generous, and we'll get into that more in a minute. So here are some facts, though, that aren't assumptions, right? The vast majority of companies will never have a liquidity event. They will never sell. I've seen anywhere from that 20 to 40% of companies that get listed for sale on like online or wherever else, who through investment bankers, whatever it is, actually sell. But I mean, that doesn't take into account, all the millions that never even got to that phase. So it's pretty low percentage of companies are ever going to have a liquidity event. And then of those that do sell, the vast majority are going to be for way less than $10 million. A lot of them might be for a loss or a break even, one times revenue. Maybe it's like, something off of EBITDA, whatever it is. But basically it's going to, and that's really important, as you'll see here. Okay, so like, what does this mean, right? Why does this matter? The reason it matters is because in order to achieve a liquidity event and get paid out, if we're assuming that 10 businesses, like, 1 in every 10 is going to actually have that happen, which again is a very, very, very generous assumption. So I need to take equity in at least 10 businesses. And if I'm saying that for each one of those businesses, I'm getting 5%, but I am committing 5 hours per month, right? That means I'm committing, 5 times 10, 50 hours per month, 50 times 12. So 600 hours per year that I'm committing to those 10 businesses. And then, with our assumption that it's going to take 3 to 5 years until there's a liquidity event, it means that really it's going to be somewhere between 1,800 and 3,000 hours of my time, right? So 600 times 3 is 1,800, times 5 is 3,000. But then the question becomes like, all right, well, how much is my time worth? And this is I really want people who watch this video to understand how important these kinds of questions are. So let's say my time is worth $2,000 per working hour, and it's varied, it varies, but we'll keep it simple. I've had times or months or a year where maybe it's more like 3,000 or 4,000 or whatever it is, right? In months where it's like earlier on was significantly less. And I'm going to get to people who are making $20 an hour later in this video. So but let's just say right now my time's worth $2,000 per working hour, meaning hours I'm actually working. I don't really count time that I'm doing stuff with family, whatever it is, right? So 1,800 hours of my time, so 3 years, right, at 5 hours per month, ends up, but for 10 companies, right, ends up being basically equivalent to $3.6 million worth of my time. Whereas, 3,000 hours, so it takes 5 years at $2,000 per hour, it's $6 million worth of my time. And if we average the two together, we can just sort of say, okay, $4.8 million in the value of my working time over the next 4 years for me to take 5% in 10 companies and give each of those companies 5 hours a month of my time, right? Okay. So that means if I'm taking equity in those 10 companies and I'm giving up all those valuable hours of my time, and again, these are just working hours, I'm putting family and all these other things to the side, but just like time that I would be working, then one of those companies would really need to sell for roughly $100 million for it to have even been worth it. Now, I'm going to check if that makes sense. So, right, if I'm giving up, let's say, $4.8 million worth of my time, even if a company, that I'm a part of that 5% of sells for $50 million and I have 5%, that means I'm only getting back $2.5 million. But that's actually a really big negative ROI on my time, right? Essentially, I'm only getting back 50% of what I put in. So I'm giving you, for every dollar I'm giving you, I'm getting 50 cents back, right? That's not a good investment. Hopefully that makes sense, right? This is really important. Now, if it sold for 100 million and I got 5 million back, then I made 200,000. But even then, you argue, is that really a good investment? We'll get to that in a second, right? There's also more caveats to this anyway. So this assumes it's an all-cash buyer, doesn't take into account taxes, which would obviously take my 5 million and cut it down by 30, 40, 50%. I know depending on a lot of factors, right? And it assumes zero dilution, meaning my 5% is not diluted because they need to raise money in the future. All these other things sort of happen, and so which dilution is quite common, right, to happen. So your 5% becomes 4%, becomes 3%, becomes 2%, whatever, unless you have an anti-dilution clause, which you could put in. But, let's just say, fine, put those things to the side, 100 million is the number. How likely is that? Well, it's hard to say. Like when I just looked at some basic data, I can tell you that only 0.04% of companies founded each year ever achieve $100 million in annual sales. Now, that's not the same thing as a valuation, but it's telling, especially if I'm doing, in my case, a lot of direct-to-consumer type stuff. You're not getting a massive tech valuation or like a SaaS valuation or whatever it is. You're getting, generally valuations off of like EBITDA. Maybe there's a case where you get something off of like gross revenue, but it's a multiple of like 3 or 5 or something, right? You're not even if companies have to do 100 million in sales, lots of companies need to do way more than $100 million in sales. Because again, that's just gross. That's just gross sales, isn't it? Negative profit, growth, all these other factors, right? So they you're not. It's pretty unlikely that any of those 10 companies I mentioned are going to ever sell for 100 million. Is my point, right? And here's the even bigger issue with this. And my head's floating around. Hello. All right. So all that math assumes that my hourly rate of $2,000 an hour is staying constant for 4 years. But in reality, if I'm spending $4.8 million of my time on something, on my working time specifically, I'm looking at that as an investment. I'm hoping that that's something that's going to hopefully yield me a return of 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 100 million, whatever it is, right? And I put down there, I'm in control of my destiny when I'm in control of the allocation of my time. And the opposite of that's true as well. If I am not in control of the allocation of my time, I'm not really in control of my destiny. But that's a really important point, right? So not only are you looking at what your time's worth today, but you're looking at what you're hoping to gain, tomorrow or in the future by investing your time at that rate today. And so if I look at it this way, then it's really hard to, as I'm spending 4.8 million, to get 5 million or 10 million back. So I have to then weigh that against like, all right, well, realistically, if I put $4.8 million worth of my time, into my own businesses and things that I'm focused on currently, what's the return on that going to be, right? Over 4 years, my guess is it's significantly higher than what I'm going to get from any one company selling. Of course, there's the unicorns that become billion-dollar companies, but the 0.004% for $100 million in revenue, turns out it is it very much even smaller percentage that are going to make it to billion-dollar status or sell for $1 billion, right? They might go public or IPO or are they raising more money? And again, you're getting diluted. So really, what's like the game there, right? So kind of the huge takeaway here, there's a couple more slides because I want to go back to like distributions and, when you're starting out, and those will be the things we'll finish off with. But it really makes sense to kind of value your time. And I put busy versus intentional because I think people a lot of times with me will be like, I know how busy you are, but I don't actually feel busy ever. I just feel like I'm extremely selective and intentional with how I spend and allocate my time. So something is just, I know what I'm trying to do. I know what I'm working on. I also prioritize family and things of that nature. And so I'm extremely selective, but I'm not busy. Busy means like I can't even stop to think. I have time. I prioritize time to think, time to read, things of that nature, right? So it's valuing your time and being intentional with it. And then treating any allocation of your working time as an investment. So like I just talked about on that previous slide, right? If I'm investing $2,000 an hour of my working time today, I better be doing it. I'm not doing it to break even. I'm doing it to get a return that ends up being worth $4,000, $6,000, $8,000 an hour. I'm trying to arbitrage my own time. And that means like projecting and tracking like what the ROI is going to be, like I just did. So if I look at it all and I'm like, wow, this actually doesn't make sense. Why am I trying to, like why would I do all of that extra work and give all that valuable time of mine when the ROI is going to probably be like, best case, 50%, a loss of basically half of the value. And the probability of getting a home run that makes it so worthwhile is so extremely low. And I think this is really important for freelancers and those who are starting out. So, because when I was starting out too, right, early on, 2011, 12, I would have people offer me like potential equity to help them. And you might think that seems weird though, because you're like, well, I'm only making $20 an hour. So the math would make sense for me, but it probably doesn't. And I'm going to show you why that's the case. Why? Says the slide. Right. So if your time is worth $20 an hour, there's going to be very few people who are trying to give you 5% of their company. Instead, you'll get offered equity. So it does happen, but it's normally in businesses that are really just ideas or where they want you to do a lot of the work, like build out all the sales funnels, do client acquisition, right? Like sort of like I've had that a lot of times when I was starting out. Where it's like, oh yeah, I just need customers, right? So just build the funnel and help me get customers and I'll give you a percentage of the company. But it's like, that's a lot of work to do. And that ties in because you're going to spend way more than 5 hours a month, right? It's more likely going to be 20 hours a week. But you're also going to just be doing it for one company. And as we talked about, any one company has an extremely low probability of ever experiencing a liquidity event and an even lower probability of that liquidity event being anything significant. So really you just spent, you're essentially just working a lot of, it's a really bad investment of your time. So it's a really crappy gamble, right? I used to play poker a lot. I still like poker. Met my wife at a poker table. Just also learned about copywriting through that. So if you just sort of do thinking in bets like Andy Duke talks about, and you think about the probability of this bet succeeding, it's just not a good bet to make. And I don't know a single person really who's taking like equity in something really early on when they were really early on and the company was early on. That's paid off for. I mean, I know I get it in Silicon Valley and things of that nature, but even then people are getting paid like a salary and all these other things. And most of the time, most of those companies don't ever actually succeed, and very few people get to become, IPO millionaires or decamillionaires or whatever it is, right? So last thing here, what about distributions? So that can actually make more sense, but you need to be really clear what the company's business plan is. Is it to be profitable or is it to be acquired? Because a lot of times companies that are going to get acquired, what they're getting acquired for might be the customer base or it might be for the growth. But if it's for the growth or acquiring a lot of customers to be attractive, that usually means you're taking all the money and profit or a very high percentage of it and you're just reinvesting it back into the business to continue to grow and to continue to acquire customers. So if the goal is to sell, then the idea that you're going to be getting fat distributions, meaning essentially like, okay, there's 100K in profit. We're going to, for simplicity's sake, 100K in profit, we're going to, share it out to divvy it out to all the owners. So you get $5,000. I think I talk about this on the next slide, in fact, right? That's not, if the company's being built to sell, then distributions are probably not going to be particularly likely at all. So fine. But if it's like, oh, the goal is, to make profit. So like, for example, if a company's already profitable, then it might make sense. Like a company's already netting 100K a month on 500K a month in revenue, let's say, and they offer you, 5% equity for your sweat, then it could be worthwhile if your time's worth $20 an hour right now. Just don't think you're going to have this big, payout at the end when the company sells, because the probability of that happening is very low. Instead, what's going to happen is you're going to be making 5K a month in this example. That's this is again rough, because if there's 100K profit, the company's still probably not just distributing all of that profit. They're probably keeping some of it in reserve. They're doing a lot of other things with it, but just keeping it simple. And sure, if you could help them grow to say like $500K a month in like net distributions, and let's say they're doing $2.5 million in monthly revenue, then you'd be making $25K a month. And that's pretty good money for that period of time. It's like $300,000 a year. Like, you're probably pretty happy with that overall, right? So it could make sense. But keep in mind, again, most companies don't ever get to $2.5 million in monthly revenue. Or if they do, it takes several years. So then the question becomes, could you build something or learn a skill that's going to make it easier for you to make $300,000 a year in the same period of time it would take for this one company to maybe get to $2.5 million a month in revenue, or $30 million a year. And a lot of times, you want to be realistic with this, because of course we can convince ourselves of anything. Man, this is going to blow up. Here's all the reasons it's going to be successful. I think this thing could sell for $1 billion. Oh, they're going to scale to like, all these pieces are in place. They have deals with distributors, but it's like, part of it's you're going to have to learn if you're new, because it just is what it is. Like, I just see inexperienced people make the same mistakes, and then experienced people tell them, hey, that's not how it actually works. And then they just sort of ignore it because they want it to be true so bad, and it's still not how it works. But, if you learn something like AI right now, or you build a business, build a company, gain skills, things of that nature, like, that's generally going to be the better bet. Ultimately, I think with where we're at, like, the best bet, depending on your goal, if you want to like really be like a millionaire and things of that nature, is to build businesses. And I think, because I don't have this in the slide, but actually this is extremely important. As you have a way higher skill set, then the equity offers change. It goes from like, help me build all of this, to like, hey, we're already doing well. We need somebody to solve this one thing for us. You're already good at solving that one thing. We'll give you a percentage of the company. Like, I have a friend who I talk to him like weekly. He just got a letter of intent for, I'm going to choose a slightly different number just so I don't give away, right, the stuff. Let's say it was about 40 million, and that's not far off, right? Sold a company last year for, let's say, 60 million, and has sold like multiple other companies. He wants me to help him with a brand, and I could probably get like 5%, maybe up to 10%. And it's like, I'm still not going to do it probably, because of, I think in that case it would be more than 5 hours of my time, right, per month. It's probably like 10, 15, 20, and I do the whole calculus, right? But that's a better opportunity. I get that because of my skill set, right? This is a proven operator who knows how to sell businesses, who sold multiple businesses, who has the relationships, who has all the infrastructure. It's a way better deal for me, right? So I go back to this with you. It's not even the idea that gain equity, as a service provider, freelancer, whatever it might be, if you're in that camp or in that boat, doesn't make sense. It could actually be really amazing, but when you're early on, then it's not the time, really, because again, you're just going to be working tons of hours for no money, essentially. But you're not in Silicon Valley, most likely, and so the actual, like, the odds of that paying out for you are really not good. It's better to like really develop a extremely lucrative skill, and then either build something like build your own business, or at that point then go partner and get a percentage to do the thing that you're really great at within a company, and get a percentage of equity. And again, it could be a company that either you think really does have a chance to sell, or it could be a company that has a track record of being profitable and taking distributions. It's a different conversation at that point. That's really it. I thought this video would be 10 minutes. It's about 20 minutes. I hope this is valuable. It's not AI. I know people like it if I just show you like a bunch of prompts that do cool stuff. So But I just felt like it was a really valuable way of looking at time, and I don't know, helped me. I really thought about it this week and was like, this really clarified some things for me. So I wanted to shoot this video. If you did find it valuable, please like the video, leave a comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree. If you think I'm a dodo or you think this is awesome. Make sure you're subscribed and all that to my channel. And I'll try and do more videos soon. Thank you.